Mohamed, walk us through this milestone. How big is it for the continent, for Europe?
So undoubtedly, John, and thank you for having me, undoubtedly it's going to be smaller in size, and there's going to be conditionality attached, as Maria pointed out. But what's critical here is that there will be agreement on a compromise, and every side will be able to go back home and declare victory. And that puts a foundation in place if you need to do more. That's why it's a milestone. It is a step forward on fiscal integration, and it's a very important step forward to support the monetary union that is key to this ever closer.
So, Mohamed, I've heard this several times over the last several days, that this is a mechanism that, if agreed upon, we can return to and do more with. Mohamed, is it that, or is it a one-off? Because either outcome has huge repercussions for financial markets. If it's the former, great. We really have to revalue Europe and erode redenomination risk in a way that we haven't done for the last several years. If it is just a one-off, then I'm not sure we've got anything good here, Mohamed. All we have is a very late response to the pandemic and the economic pain that we experience on the continent right now, and we're not going to return to this in the future. Which one is it, and how can you be sure?
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It really does matter. I believe it is the former. This is not a one-off. This is the start of an important process. That is how Europe gets to better positions. The market, John, if you look at the Italy-Germany spread, that is back to March levels. We are now back to around 150 basis points. So the market also believes that between this fiscal agreement and the ECB, we are getting to a place where you worry less about the really bad outcomes.
You don't get rid of redenomination risk, but you certainly erode redenomination risk. Mohamed, with that in mind, if we can make some progress later this evening, and let me be clear, it is still really contentious over in Brussels about the strings that would have to be attached to any money just handed out. But if we can make some real progress overnight, what do you think needs to be revalued, reevaluated on the continent in financial markets?
I think it's the euro versus U.S. And as you know, for a very long time, I've been saying wait on fading the U.S. in favor of Europe. Given what's happening in the U.S., given what's happening in Europe, I think it's harder to argue against fading some of your U.S. exposure in favor of more European exposure.
Mohamed, away from the currency, if you look at the Italian bond market, European peripheral banks, any of them attractive to you at the moment from your perspective?
Look, they've been so distorted by central bank action, and same for other elements of the bond market, that I'm not quite sure what you're getting unless you have to be in those bond markets. So no, John, at these levels, I think you just respect what central banks have done, and you stay mostly on the sideline unless you have no choice.
So, Mohamed, there's a key distinction here. Believing in revaluing Europe just in terms of the multiple that you would put on a single euro of earnings, and believing that we can generate a sustainable, durable recovery on the continent. If you have confidence about one, do you have confidence about the other?
No, and that's really important. So we think of a whole element of risks, and you have to address each. And it's not just limited to the two you've cited. There's other risks as well. There's liquidity risk. There's all sorts of other risk. No, I think there is still a question mark as to what is Europe's engine of growth. Europe will not be able to rely on the global economy. The global economy is as desynchronized as I've ever seen it. The U.S. is stumbling towards a recovery. So there is no clear engine of growth going on. So the areas that depend on global growth need to find another engine of growth. And it's not clear that Europe has found one. And that's why when the Dutch are pushing for structural reform, it's not about punishing countries like Italy. It is about trying to find more endogenous growth engines.
Mohamed, there's a key debate. There's three of them for financial markets and equities. It is growth versus value, it is small versus large, and it is US versus international. And on the latter one, the last one, the third one, I want to address it with you right now. You've been very skeptical about that and pushed back over the last year, not just through this pandemic, about the international part of this market outperforming the United States. Where do you come back down on that debate at the moment, Mohamed, and how has your thinking evolved?
So more positive about Europe, but still concerned about EM. So I can see an argument for fading the U.S. in favor of Europe. I do not see the argument for favoring the U.S. in favor of emerging economies. That's going to take a lot more time. I think people underestimate how difficult the outlook is for most emerging economies right now.